ask the question.
So I guess the other question off the website was for you specifically, and it was a user who said, is the trade-off between free markets and foreign aid really a false choice, a false dichotomy? Can't we have both in equal amount?
Oh, absolutely.
Right. So large-scale foreign aid, transfers of hundreds of billions of dollars.
But plus. Absolutely. And let me tie it in with what I was about to say.
Great.
And you'll see that it ties in very well. I repeat, I haven't talked about cutting off aid anywhere. What we've just said, and I think that's the emphasis of both Dambisa and myself, is that it's got certain externalities. Well, let's get the numbers. A year, the West gives in concessional aid $10 billion to developing countries. Concessional. In terms of overseas development assistance, which comes with all sorts of guarantees, it's about $105 billion. And private sector assisted by export guarantees and others is about $472 billion. Right? That's what we're talking about. Now, here's what happens, and the kind of thing I would like to see understood. It is that the market, at least to me, not a guy from the north, but from the south, and what I admire as I see it working in Canada and as I see it working in Europe, is essentially the capacity, the possibility of comparing. That's why, though I am so grateful that you've decided to untie your aid so that you can use Canadian funds to fund something that comes elsewhere, you're still talking about the $10 billion. What interests me is the other $500 billion. And let me tell you how that's tied up, which it isn't through finance. The way it's tied up is that aside from the people giving charity and doing good and wonderful work all over the world, there's other sectors which are called Export Credit Guarantee Departments, Compagnie Française de Commerce Extérieur, ECGD, these other organizations, which what they do is give concessional called aid, according to the OECD, the Development Assistance Committee. They give it to each developing country and they say, what we're going to do is fund your studies on how you're going to do a hydroelectric plant, on how you're going to do the infrastructure, and how you're going to do a meat packing factory, whatever it is. But since, of course, we don't really trust you, I mean, hey, you're from a developing country, we'd like to supervise this technically. So we will have a local company, it's not tied, supervising the studies. Of course, what does a Belgian engineer do when he draws up the specifications? He calls up the local factories, and he gets the specifications from Belgians. The Frenchman calls up ses compagnons, and the Brits call up their friends, because that's where they get the information from. I mean, engineers don't build up specifications. They're made in different factories. Then they write up the specification, and then they tender it. Fair and square, says the World Bank. Fair and square, says the Inter-American Development Bank. And overall, the average surcharge is 60%. Let me tell you, using figures given by the Pakistani National Development Commission, prices for projects coming from Germany could go up to 392% for using so-called assistance aid over those in the market. In the case of Italy, 240%. In the case of Japan, 123%. It isn't that the German government wanted to do this or that the Japanese government did it. It is just simply that the private sector will always go for profit. So much for being a neoliberal. They will. What's the only way to protect yourself? Getting a well-intentioned politician to tell you they're untying aid? No. Allowing us to compare. What do you call comparisons? Comparisons are called market. So yes, there is a way of making both sides live together. Make aid compete with the private sector and let's get the prices out in the open instead of tying it because it's concessional.